Pace and Sarah Hartfield.
Hey,
Welcome.
let's
Hello,
go.
hello.
Thanks for being
We're
on.
so glad you're here.
Thanks
We're
for
glad
having
you're
us.
friends of ours. We're glad you're in our lives. We're glad to have you on this podcast. And I love especially that you're really not feeling super excited about this.
I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling nervous.
Oh, don't be.
Well,
Oh.
it's a conversation. It'll be great.
Yeah. So we can start off a little bit, just story, life. Pace, you've lived in 800 million states.
Yeah, Army brat. Dad was in the Army, and I was born in Germany, in Frankfurt, and moved to Tallahassee, Florida first, then to Alabama. Lived in Charlotte for 6 years, and then from North Carolina to Tennessee, and that's where I went to middle school, high school, university, and that's where I met Sarah.
Who just lived in Tennessee.
No, she
No,
went to school
I
there.
was a coal miner's daughter, except not really. So I used to
sounds
say
cool.
that. And
Loretta
then
Lynn, was she a
actually-
coal miner?
When
Yes.
you say
Yeah.
I'm a coal miner's daughter, but not
really.
Well, because I used to say I'm a coal miner's daughter, and then I actually saw the movie, and I was like, well, no, not exactly.
There's a movie called Coal Miner's Daughter.
Well, it's
Loretta
like
Lynn.
Loretta Lynn's
Yeah.
in it, and it's like they lived in a shack
Come on,
in
every
West
Southerner knows
Virginia.
that.
And
I've never heard of this
And I was
movie.
like, okay, that wasn't exactly my life story. My
Not
dad
that
was a
kind.
coal mining engineer, so I lived all throughout the Midwest, Colorado, North Dakota, Illinois, and then we met in Tennessee.
So you were living in Southern Illinois.
So he would
when you came.
engineer the coal mines,
He was-
structurally making sure they were
never
sound.
knew what he did. He was the superintendent. I
Did he
don't know.
leave for work whistling every day and saying hi ho?
Not generally.
And then he was the head of safety for Consol.
Yeah,
which
for
is a
Consol.
huge.
It's so bad too. The
mining
coal
company.
mining things, it's really interesting because there's so much health stuff that comes
Yep.
from working in coal mines, right?
Highly
Yeah.
regulated.
Black
Well,
lung.
his were so those are the below ground mines. He was surface coal mining.
But then also the damage it does to the area where they do the coal
That's
mining.
the surface mining.
And
problem.
years later, there's all they leave and go on to somewhere else, and
Yep.
Arkansas, some of those
Yep.
places are just devastated.
Yeah.
Her dad always intimidated me, still intimidates me a little bit because he's an engineer, man. He's smart
Yeah.
and buttoned up,
Well, he's an engineer, so
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird that we still rely on coal for so much?
Yeah.
When you think about how archaic that is, we're digging in the ground, finding stuff, and what do you do that? We're gonna burn it to run a train,
Yeah.
to start a fire. I mean, it's necessary, but they call it a fossil fuel. Just seems so
weird. I know.
Yeah.
But
Primitive.
that was my whole childhood, so I
Wow.
never really knew what he did. I know he studied rocks for his undergrad degree, and I remember thinking, why would you do that? But then he went into coal mining engineering, and
There you go.
it worked out because I went to college in Tennessee.
you met
and met
Pace.
Pace.
Yes.
Yeah.
like the diamond in the proverbial
I was
diamond.
a junior. She was a freshman.
Yep,
Covered her eyes so she couldn't see any other dudes.
kind of.
There you go.
You know?
And were you in sports?
I
Is that
didn't
how you
play-
won her over?
No.
With
No,
your
he was
athletic
just
prowess?
cute.
Oh,
He was really
He
cute.
still is very
Hey.
cute.
I
He's got a
know.
chiseled jaw.
Hey.
You know.
He's got a real all-American look to him.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, so it wasn't sports; it was just the cuteness. And were
Uh-huh.
you were you in sports, a cheerleader? What did you do?
First time I saw her, she had
No.
a ball cap on, slammed, and a sweatshirt, and I was like, "Hey, baby,
There
let's
you go.
go."
Well, and you had a girlfriend.
I did have a girlfriend.
Wait, did you have classes together?
No, I just saw her in the library
No.
first time.
Well, we did. We did
Oh, in
have
the
class
library.
What did we
together.
have? Oh, French.
After we started dating, I talked him into taking French with me because it was a romance language. But I didn't.
Terrible idea.
Well, yeah, because
Had
he
you gotten rid of your other girlfriend by this point?
I had. She
my-
she
she
actually
got
cheated
rid of
on
him.
me.
So
Yikes! Maybe it's because she knew you were
I
saying,
had more
"Hey,
girls cheat on me.
to Sarah.
he's
what it is.
actually had multiple girls two-time him, but it worked out great.
That worked out great. Reminds me of that scene in The Office where Dwight was like, "I suspected my girlfriend was cheating on me, so I paid someone to follow her. Turns out she was, with multiple guys actually." Poor
Yep.
Dwight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, are you team Office or team Parks and Rec?
We
I'm-
have seen,
I would be Team Office, but I like Parks and Rec.
yeah.
Yeah, I've not
We've only
watched
watched a
enough
little
of
You've
bit.
Parks
gone
and Rec.
down the dark hole. I
Yeah.
was kind of that way, I'm not going to like it. But then I gave myself over to it, and you know what?
Yeah,
It's
it's
went down.
hilarious.
It was
Good.
pretty fun. We actually,
Ron Swanson.
Ron Swanson.
we don't watch a lot of normal people TV shows because Pace likes to watch weird people TV shows.
What does this mean?
What does this
History
mean?
Channel,
No.
Moonshiners,
Gold
Gold Rush,
Yeah.
that
There's-
kind of
there's
stuff.
Like
still
more
Now,
digging.
docudramas?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
my world was crushed. One day, Sarah told me that the Moonshiner thing was like made up.
It's all fake.
Oh.
I'm not familiar with this show.
And he was like, I don't need to hear that. And just
Crushed.
kept on
What is
watching it. It's
Basically, it's just documenting moonshining,
in like West Virginia.
in West Virginia and
But
North
it's all
Carolina.
these guys
It's
with
not real?
overall. No.
Like, is it Prohibition era?
No,
It's
it's like
now.
now.
Oh, now.
Yeah, and so these guys are
Oh.
backwoods, but it happens.
I'm guaranteeing.
It still
The
happens.
guy's name was what? Tickle?
Tickle, yes.
Tickle in
sounds
his
good.
overalls.
Incredible.
And I was like, babe, I'm Googling this.
No, I
And
think
it's
there's
not
some.
real.
I think there is truth to it.
What motivation would people have to make moonshine when there's alcohol at stores now?
That's a
Man,
great
it's bootleg,
question.
man. You can make.
Well, I think
all
it's
kinds
not
of money.
regulated, so you don't have to pay all of the
Yeah,
All
yeah.
the taxes
overhead
and
Under the
dues.
table.
fees. Yeah, but they're
I do like the word moonshine.
Yeah.
well,
White
You
lightning.
like moons.
I do like the moon.
Yeah.
Okay, so and you guys, how long were you married? Dating before you got married?
3 years.
Friends for 6 months first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
had you
dating.
were you both Christians at that point?
Yeah.
And how did you guys, Sarah? How did you become a Christian?
I was 7, and my mom, my dad was not a believer until I was in college. But my mom was, and she was kind of a new Christian. And so she read me devotions every night. And I remember when I was 7, like kneeling in our shag carpet in our basement. And what's cool is I still have the devotional book that she used to lead me to the Lord.
What was the devotional book?
Well, now I can't remember what it's called.
But you have it.
I have
you
it.
know where
I
to
have it in
find
my
it if you need
library.
it.
Yeah.
That's special.
Yeah.
That's
it was
what's
sweet.
beautiful. Jennie was
Yeah.
similarly.
I was 7 also, actually.
Wow.
You guys
And
have
my
that in
dad, it was bedtime. My dad would always come in and like pray with me, and I remember very clearly like him explaining the gospel. I had heard it, but he explained it, and I just remember him praying with me at bedtime when I was 7.
Wow.
It's so important. There's a lot of families and young parents that listen to this podcast, and I think it's really important what you guys are saying, because like your parents both took an intentionality and took a moment with you. One of my favorite, and it just left such a mark on me, this like, and probably because it rhymes, but that Charles Spurgeon quote, before your child reaches the age of 7, teach him how to get to heaven.
Great.
And better yet, the work will thrive if it's done before age 5.
Wow.
And really, there's just such an import on that. Like, obviously, that sounds Dr. Seuss and it's sticky, but the Bible does say, like, teach your child the way to go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it, which is a principle from Proverbs. Obviously, there's no guarantee because you have free will involved. And
Yeah.
like the prodigal son, there can be rebellion, but you guys are both fruit of that
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
And so I just would say, parents, like, teach your kids how to get to heaven. Teach your kids these things matter. Put that blood above the doorpost, like in the book of Exodus, because it really will make an impact.
And I think it's more simple than what we can sometimes make it to be, because like in Deuteronomy, it talks about like parents teaching their kids on the way. So like as you go, as you walk, and I just think there's so many moments as we're driving our kids in the car to school, as we're going on a walk, as we're living life, just how Jesus would teach from just regular everyday things. Like there's moments where we can be intentional and where we can take a moment to teach about God's goodness or whatever. It's always so simple, but like,
Right.
but if we ask God to open our eyes to see those things in the everyday, it is more simple
Yep.
than what we can make it. Because I think sometimes for me, it's like, oh, I need to teach them Bible study, or I need to like sit down with them. But I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like whenever we say time to sit down and read the Bible, that's when like
they collectively
Things
lose
go
their mind.
They
crazy.
start
Thrill.
fighting.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they argue over whose spot it is on the couch.
Yeah.
When one of
Yes.
them's naked, you're like, hey, wait, put your clothes back on. This is church.
But just the simplicity of taking moments to teach them, like
Yeah.
that's God's heart, I believe. But
Sarah, did it stick for you? Was there ever a wandering phase? Was there ever a prodigal years?
So I said my dad wasn't a believer, and so church was very on again, off again for us because he was a superintendent of this coal mine. He worked 6 days a week.
wow.
And so Sunday was the day that was his day off. So I remember when we would go to church, it was never with my dad. And we would come home and then have like Sunday lunch with him. So church was not a huge part of my life because he wasn't part of that until I was in high school. And so like I never my salvation was real at 7. You know, I never had like maybe I wasn't saved kind of thing. But I don't know that I was really consistently walking with the Lord until I was probably about 17. And then so then I ended up going to this
That
little
must have been
Christian
so hard
school.
on your mom. You know, that tension of like, I want to be a fully devoted follower, but like.
But then, and my dad was never antagonistic to it.
He just wouldn't go.
He just didn't go. And
didn't believe. He's an intellectual.
Yeah.
But I mean, unbelievable story of how he actually gave his life to Jesus.
What happened? How that happened, Sarah?
Well, I was in college and I was going to this Christian university, and I was, dating Pace, and he was, studying to be a pastor. And I remember sitting and talking to my dad, and he was actually reading some fictional book about a different faith. And he was talking to me about how weird this faith seemed. And then he was like, and really, Christianity is weird too when you start thinking about all the things. And I just was like, Dad, I am not smart enough to answer any of your questions, but you really should read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis and More Than a Carpenter by Josh McDowell. And so my dad read both of them. And then shortly after, it's very strange because he's very like, type A, buttoned up, you do things the right way kind of guy, very reserved. They went to this extremely charismatic revival at this no-lie snake handling church in West Virginia.
Really?
Man, I'm talking about hillbilly
I
crazy.
can't even believe
hear
he
about
went.
those.
Snake
That's
handling
a real thing.
for real.
For real. And he went, they did an altar call, and my dad went forward. And they called me and told me, I mean, I remember the call and just being like, if my dad would get saved, anybody can get saved.
Wow.
Never thought it would happen.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Oh, that's
really
beautiful.
cool.
So did like a friend invite him to that church or
My
that
mom.
revival?
It was my
Your
mom. It was actually where my mom and siblings were going when they lived in, I guess it was Virginia, not West Virginia.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like in the hollers of Virginia. And she invited him yet again. And for some reason, he went. And, I mean, we're like tambourines and ribbons, and they're blowing the shofar and like all the stuff that is totally not my dad.
But he heard the message and he got saved.
And that's where he got saved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yep.
That's incredible.
C.S. Lewis, Josh McDowell.
So those things chipped away at it and just really, it'll be amazing to find out in heaven how many people, resources like that have impacted,
Yeah.
touched. Like God gives in like once a generation a resource like that,
Yeah. How'd y'all meet real quick? Sorry.
We met at church, so we
Same place where I met you.
Hey.
At
Calvary,
Albuquerque.
Albuquerque, because
Yeah.
I grew up in
on.
Monterey, California. When I was 19, I moved to New Mexico to intern at the church that Levi was at, and he was serving as the assistant
Yes.
to the
Assistant
youth
to the youth pastor.
and I was serving as an intern planning mission trips, and so we met about halfway through that year.
Wow.
But part of doing the internship, I had made the decision to not romantically date for the duration of the internship. That was kind of one of the
It was
guidelines
one of the rules.
for it.
You couldn't date if you were an intern.
Yeah, and so we met about halfway through. And it was cool, though, because there was just that foundation of we were serving together and we liked each other, but there wasn't that pressure of like, is he going to ask me out? It was just like, no, we're not going to date for 6 more months or whatever. And that
The
was
neat
really
thing
special.
about it was, though we didn't intend it like that, it became a year of resetting. I had a really intense relationship in Bible college that nearly ended in marriage. She had a really intense relationship that nearly ended in marriage.
Wow.
And before the internship started. So we both inadvertently took a year off of dating.
Yeah.
Neither of us dated anybody for a year. And we had Andy Stanley on this podcast a few weeks ago, and he talked about something he's advised couples for a long time. Like when you get out of intense stuff, or if you've been in a season where you've been, sexually active, or, whatever it is, and you really kind of just need to have a reset. He says he always tells couples, take a year off.
Wow.
Or not couples, people.
Yeah.
Take a year, just recalibrate your heart. Take a year, give it to God. Take a year and just let that healing set in, so that when you do date again, you're a different version of yourself.
And he said literally, like, put it in the calendar.
Go to your calendar and go 12 months from now, and right on that day, I will consider dating at this point and not further.
That's wisdom.
So it's funny, we didn't know that, and we hadn't been given such sage wisdom, but because of her commitment, that's where it ended up. When I met her, she had 6 more months, and I had been not dating for 6 months, and then it was like, well, let's give this a shot. And so we just were friends for that period of time, but it built the friendship that we stand on now.
Wow.
And so it's been pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Now 3 years. Okay, so 3 years dating. We're picking this back up now.
Yeah.
And then you engaged. You were
dating.
engaged
We
for.
engaged her. We got married her senior year.
Right.
So
college.
I'm
Right
2 years
before.
older than
You were
she
way
is.
out of at that point.
Yeah, so I was working at a local church as an intern in student ministry, doing some speaking and working. Gosh, I did landscaping. I worked at a book distributor. Anything, I could do to
Yeah.
make some money.
Daycare.
Yeah, our
Wow.
first
Did
year of
everything.
marriage, I made $12,000.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Like
There you go.
because the church had all the time and just wasn't able to pay much.
Yeah.
And but it was incredible. We still we learned tithing then.
Well, yeah. We
And yet, I'm
still
sure as you look
tithe.
back on that year,
Oh
it's one of the probably the best years of your life.
yeah.
Yeah. We
I mean,
actually
our apartment was about as big as this room.
It was very small.
Cinder block.
But we sponsored a compassion child.
See, there you
Yeah.
go.
Even then, because I had started when I was 16, and then we sponsored him all the way until he was 20.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we did it as very
On a
broke
$12,000
newlyweds.
annual salary.
Yeah.
While
Tithing.
Yeah. I mean, yep.
And
Tithing.
paying for a compassion.
Well,
child.
Yeah, and she
paying
had
off.
she had her housing was covered, so that helped. I mean, tremendously from your scholarship. Am I remembering that correctly?
Wait, you were married and
We got married right before my senior
her
year,
senior
and
year.
I was
Gotcha.
on a scholarship. So because we were newlyweds and so
Room and
broke,
board was taken care of.
well, yeah,
right?
it paid towards.
Yeah.
No, actually, that's not true.
No?
Just
Okay.
for 1 month, it covered our rent.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
But isn't it
But
funny how like you guys probably felt like kings and queens in that
Yeah.
time?
It was
You know,
pretty great.
you have romance, you love each other. You know,
Yeah.
it's funny, and you put into place then rhythms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said, with like, we're not going to wait till
Yep.
we're rich to support a compassion child. We're going to do it
Yeah.
now and make.
Yeah,
it
I mean,
work.
our
Yeah.
date night, we would go to the school cafeteria, and right before they closed down because they'd have leftover cookies, we would split
Oh,
a
I
fountain
love
drink and have a chocolate chip
well,
cookie,
they
and that would
split
be our
a
date
fountain
night.
drink.
Split a
Yeah,
fountain drink,
split a
they'd give us
fountain
a
drink.
day old cookie.
Yeah.
I love it.
But it was
So
awesome.
much.
It
Yes.
was awesome. Every now and then, man, we'd go to like Outback and get an appetizer, and that was like living
my
high
gosh.
on the hog.
Yeah.
If you're having a blooming onion, it's a big
Come
day.
on,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
It's a big day.
Cheese fries back in the day.
That is funny. But see, and you put the principle in place of a date night. And a lot of
Yeah.
couples listening are like, we can't, I've heard it a million times. You have too.
Yeah.
I can't afford to have a date night.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Romance works on any budget.
Come on.
Put that stuff in place.
That's right.
Our big thing was we'd go walk around Costco and eat samples. And then we'd have the hot dog and Coke combo for $1.44. You know, it's like, sorry, we can't get the churro tonight, honey. But
Costco, the Costco hot dog, the gift that keeps on giving.
honestly, and yeah, I mean, our apartment was like $536, and that was a stretch. She was a waitress. I was, assistant youth pastor at that point. I might have been the youth
Yeah, I
pastor.
think you were.
I think that I got the promotion by then, but it was like our apartment was supposed to be $700 a month, but they offered us $530 if we took a unit right above the dumpster. And I was like, oh yes, we will. A, it'll be a shorter walk to throw the trash
trashy.
out. B, it's $200 cheaper. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was our 500, and
Seriously.
it was the La Mirage Apartments,
Yeah.
and but those memories from
Yeah.
from that season,
Come on.
you can't get that back. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful time, and
Yeah.
you make it work. You
Yeah.
know, so
Absolutely. I remember y'all's building in Albuquerque. You had the skate park,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
and I remember like they've got a radio studio.
Yes.
Totally.
It was a completely separate building,
Yeah.
right?
Super
Yeah.
nice, and that's
Yeah.
where I got my start. I think
Yeah.
in radio, like I used to do a talk show every Sunday night. I would do an hour-long talk show where I would just pick a topic and then just talk about it.
Crazy.
And then I had a couple different co-hosts throughout the time, but then we would take calls. So I'd be like, tonight we're talking about like tattoos. Can a Christian have a tattoo? Is the topic. And then people would call. They call the number if you want to talk about it. It was called Raw Talk for Real Life.
Come
Wow.
And the tagline was real, relevant, raw.
Yeah.
And the cool thing was I had no idea what these callers were going to talk about. They just would call and be like, all right. And be like, I think tattoo's the worst. You are the devil if you have a tattoo. And then someone else would be like, I think tattoos are great. And we would just kind of talk about it. I would just ask them questions and, whatever. And I think the best thing I heard someone say was, because the argument, one caller made the argument that like the body's the temple of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And then this other caller was like, well, if my body's a temple of the Holy Spirit, my temple has stained glass.
Oh, pretty good.
I don't know if I've heard anything better than that.
Hard to
you
argue
know?
with that.
That's cool. That
awesome.
yeah, that's part of your past, and
But that formed me, like,
Formed you.
because radio, as you know, like you've had to, and we'll get into this, but like especially preaching in the pandemic, preaching
Yeah.
to empty buildings,
Tough.
you're having to believe there's people, even right now as we record this, there's people listening to this on Spotify and 2 weeks later on YouTube and on Apple, podcast app, but we're having to like have the faith of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of built that into me really early on.
Yeah.
I was telling you, like, you have tremendous recall
Yeah.
when you preach. Just even in conversation, you're able to pull back in something that you read. And do you think even back then when you were doing radio, that was God shaping you and having that kind of recall for
I think
random
so.
questions
Oh,
like
for sure.
coming in?
Well, and he would study, like he would pick the topic and like do research on it, but then it would be very random. But all the stuff that he had like learned, but he just has that kind of memory. Anyway.
Stuff that I've read sticks with me pretty good.
Yeah.
Usually the more unimportant, the easier it sticks with me. Are you like? But like
Yeah.
stuff that I'm like trying to remember,
Yeah.
like someone's name. I'm like,
Right.
gee, I don't know, but do I know how many spikes were used to build the Transcontinental Railroad? Yes, but your name, gosh,
Oh,
that's what's so
Tell me your name
embarrassing.
again.
Yeah.
No.
And the worst, like, when people are like, "Do you remember me?" I'm like,
Oh.
"Yes, I do. I see your face. I remember you." And then they'll go, "What's my name?" I'm like, "You're mean.
That's
Yeah.
so
You should not
mean.
say that to somebody."
Hey, I had a guy tell me one time, back when I was a student ministry in Dallas, and I told him, like, man, I forget these students' names all the time. I feel terrible. And he's like, man, Pace, don't feel bad. Just spin it on them. Just next time they say, you don't remember my name, and you just look at him and say, well, why is it my fault you didn't make yourself memorable?
Wow.
Don't say that.
I don't, no, I'm gonna highly recommend you don't go with that
say
line.
that.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty good.
But have you ever done it?
No, I have not.
No, yeah, no. How to lose friends and not influence people. That is tough. What's the best trick you've ever heard about learning names? I'm like eager to learn.
I just always heard you say it right
Yeah,
after you
repeat
hear
it
it.
back.
Say it a
them.
bunch of times.
Yeah.
Well, and because this is hard, because when you ask them their name, like actually engaging and thinking about what they're saying, because so often, and I don't know why this is, but like I'll ask a name, and then it's like my mind like leaves for a second, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, oh, I didn't even hear it. And then I'm like, and then most of the rest of the conversation, I'm like, I don't know what their name is. This is the worst. I'm gonna have to ask them what their name is later on. But you're right. I think it is saying it
Yeah.
and then saying it again, like even as you're leaving, or something that learning something about them and connecting that. But it is repetition. I think that is something that's super helpful.
And say it multiple times while you're talking to them
Right.
throughout, the conversation. But it is nice. And I think all of us should try our best. And I'm trying to learn names better, and I want to do better at that. But it is also so nice and refreshing when you see someone that maybe you've met once or twice, and they come right up to you, and they don't assume you're going to remember them, but they instead go, "Oh, I'm John. We met," and it's like, "Oh,
Yes.
yeah, John, that's
Thank
right. I
you.
do."
Yeah.
And I think I always want to
That's
do
so
that. Like
helpful.
It's
if I see
emotional
someone,
intelligence right there, right?
Yeah.
I want to do that more and be like,
Not
"No, I'm
assuming.
Levi," and not like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I don't want to
Yeah.
assume that,"
Yeah.
like just kind of have that humbleness
great.
to not assume that someone's going to remember it, and it's like giving them an easy win.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice when they tell you, "Hey, Sarah, I'm so and so, and remember we met at," and then like they give it all
context
to me
clue.
because I'm not only bad with names, I'm bad with faces, which
Gotcha.
is
Wow.
really bad.
Double
That's
whammy.
double
Double
whammy.
whammy.
And so
Double
I don't
whammy.
know what I'm
Stop.
doing when I talk to people. Apparently, I'm not paying attention.
It is weird
because
though
I
when
don't
you see a
remember.
face in a different context
Yeah.
than you met them in,
Yeah.
or they're not, like if it's like someone you always see in a certain uniform because you see them in one place and then you see them like in street clothes or whatever when they maybe work at a certain environment and wear
and
always
then you're racking your brain.
oh man, like our friend's a pilot, and so every time we would ever see him he's wearing his uniform, but then to see him, we saw him at the lake in the summer and he's on a boat shirtless and you're like no, you know what I mean, you're just it's a different environment.
So
Out of context.
when I first realized that I was having issues with remembering names was actually when we were leading the youth group together in Albuquerque. And there was this one kid that I just couldn't ever remember his name. And I remember leaving that moment where I was like, I don't understand why I can't remember names. And I remember just praying about it and just being like, God, help me, because
that's
I want to
insightful.
love these people who you've called us to lead, and I want to know their names, and I know their name is important to you. Like, help me. And I think that even just the awareness of that was helpful. But nowadays, I mean, this is one of my secrets, but like I literally have a note in my phone where it's called Names of People, and it's like at a restaurant, people who I see all the time, like putting their name in there and a little description of who they are. And then also sometimes in my contacts, like under their name, like there's a little note, and sometimes I'll put like, I met them at this conference and they live in blah 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 blah. Like then there just gives that's just the next step of like helping to remember. I still have issues, but I think it is, Lord help me remember their name. It's so hard though.
But man, wouldn't it be nice if everyone had a name tag all the time?
Yes.
Just walk around with that.
Great.
It'd be really great.
Yes.
Okay, so Pace, your salvation story.
Because Dad was in the military, we church wasn't really part of our life until he got out of the Army. And then we were kind of the Christmas and Easter Creaster type family. When we moved to Tennessee, my grandmother was dying, so we moved in with her to take care of her in her last days. Stayed in that small town in Tennessee. And we're kind of off and on in a small Methodist church. My mom actually grew up in that town at First Baptist Church, Trenton, Tennessee. Wow. So she didn't want to go back to the church she grew up in. And so we were kind of off and on in the Methodist church. And, growing up, my dad, being an officer in the Army, being a Southern gentleman, I was very polite, played all the sports, president of my class 3 out of the 4 years.
So you did play sports?
I did in high school.
Wasn't totally.
I did in high school.
Yeah.
Totally. I did in high school.
Because I remember you being like an athlete.
Yeah, I played basketball, football, tennis.
Yeah, see, you were making me feel stupid.
Yeah. No.
No, I wasn't an athlete.
Just not good enough to play college.
Okay, gotcha.
So anyway, so I gave my life to Christ when I was 16. I got invited to a volleyball night at a Methodist church, this Methodist church, and there was a businessman.
Sports is such a good outlet.
Just an in, and I knew some of my friends were going to be there. I'm like, yeah, I'm down. Let's go. And so this guy had just gotten like radically saved, like 32 years old, owned a John Deere dealership. So, respectable guy in the community. And he was just crazy on fire. I'm talking like wild man, charismatic.
Like Jesus
okay. In a Methodist church.
John Deere, John 3:16.
Oh yeah. What is that? yeah.
Sorry.
That's right. Anyway.
Just started hearing that.
So this guy's name's Fred Thompson. So literally, my mom.
So I looked that up. What is that song? It's like John Deere, John something, son, John 3:16.
Yeah. It's a perfect country song.
Keith Urban? I think it's Keith Urban.
Yeah.
Zy goes and plays pickup basketball weekly, and he'll be able to talk. What is
Keith
the song?
Urban? That's right.
And the song is called
John Cougar.
John Cougar,
John Deere, John 3:16.
John Cougar Mellencamp, I'm sure.
Thanks,
Oh yeah, it's
Thanks,
great.
Zy.
It's great. Anyway, so this guy, he's the one who led me to the Lord. My mom was an alcoholic, high functioning. We were pretty on the outside. No one would have known that we had that dysfunction in our home. So I really kind of led these, little, different life, and always was just try to cover up what was going on at home.
Wow.
And so grew up putting my mom to bed, most nights, coming home, finding her drunk. I can't tell you how many times, police officers would bring her, pull her up. One particular officer found her multiple times. She went to high school with him, and that's why he didn't arrest her. But
from just
Officer
like public
Curtis.
intoxication.
Yeah, and she'd just be pulled over in the in the Bronco, and he'd find her and he'd hand her to me.
Wow.
Bro.
And so it was really very forming, early on in my life. But this guy became someone that I could actually talk to about it, and that started just a relationship where I would go to his house. My sister's a year older than I am. She gave her life to Christ in 7th grade. She's straight A student, never been drunk, so she was always trying to influence me. So she would go with us. But anyway, long story short, over time, going to his house on Wednesday night, man, in his bedroom, actually in a chair, I received Christ, filled with the Holy Spirit, all at once. It happens. Boom, let's go. And
It was a real thing.
radical change
Real
for me.
Wow.
Yeah, walked me through. I was way too involved with my girlfriend, in every way, and walked me through that and helped me make that decision. Then kept me accountable to that decision. And I didn't date for the rest of high school. Starved some old appetites and all of those kinds of things.
Good
And
way to
so
put that.
That's
yeah.
a really good way to put that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And how's your mom today?
She's been sober longer than she was an alcoholic. She was delivered. She was a 16-year alcoholic, Levi. So 16 years. I can remember from middle school all the way through high school, every day, drunk. I remember when I was little, we lived in Charlotte.
Did she hide it or drink around you guys?
No, hit it.
Yeah.
She was so sneaky. She drank vodka. My mom's like 5'0" nothing. She may be 4'8". I don't know. She's tiny, little thing. But she drank vodka straight, and so she would put vodka in every room somewhere, just a little glass. So if you open up a cabinet and you see all clear glasses, and the back is one glass that has about a little pour of vodka, you'd never see it.
Yeah.
She would put it behind the curtains. She'd have some in the bathroom. So every room, you're like, how is she doing this? She's not drinking, but any room if no one was in, she could, take a little hit.
Wow.
So I remember I just got good at finding her spots.
Have you ever asked her, do you know how she became an alcoholic, what that journey was like?
Yeah, she told me because she's been sober now, from my freshman year in college. Miracle story, literally delivered through prayer. Unbelievable. Like she needed to go through detox, and she did, and touch Jesus. I know that doesn't happen for everyone.
Some
Happened
people
for
need
her.
AA, some people need some of those freedom
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But she was a daddy's girl. And when my father was very emotionally removed, type A perfectionist. And so when my grandfather died, when her dad died, it's kind of her emotional
Coping.
world died.
How young was she when he passed away?
Well, no, he died.
You guys were little.
Yeah, we're little. My
She's
grandfather
probably
died.
30s.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
was a big thing.
Well, but her drinking started at officer parties. So
Gotcha.
it started socially,
Yep.
and then it progressed, But,
And then that was a catalyzing event that just caused her to go full tilt into it, the grief.
yeah,
I think a lot of people do find
Yeah.
that in grief
yeah,
because it works. It numbs you. You're not going to
That's
feel
right.
anything for that while. The problem is, of course, that when it wears off, the problem's still there, and you haven't
you
dealt
still
with it at
feel it.
all. You're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
gonna feel it.
I remember being so mad, and if anyone that's listening, maybe you live with an addict or you've been around it, I remember saying, like, if you loved us, you wouldn't, and all those things, and just being so angry. And now I look back, and I think I had every right, for it to bother me, but I look back and go, man, I was speaking to an addiction.
Wow.
And a stronghold in her life, and I remember at times saying, I hate you, and all these, kinds of things. The enemy really tried to destroy our family. My father saying my senior year, hey, when you graduate, I'm leaving. I'm done. I can't do this anymore, kind of thing. And at the time I was like, yeah, makes sense to me. I'm out too, never coming back.
Wow.
But God intervened. They stay married.
Wow.
Beautiful marriage.
Oh my gosh.
So
Praise
yeah.
God.
Powerful story.
That's so powerful.
I always think about the statistic about how many the large percent of alcoholics that started drinking before they were 21, and an even crazier amount of them that began drinking before you're 18.
wow.
And just before your brain is fully developed, how dangerous it is to introduce such a highly addictive thing.
Yep.
It's easy for your brain to develop an addiction while it's still, there's a plasticity to your brain when you're 18, 19, 20, 21. And then when you introduce that in early, it's so much easier to form a bond to it. So I'm always just, every chance I get telling young people, like, hey, just really don't introduce that into your life. If you're ever going to, don't do it before,
Yep.
that age.
Yeah, I
so
know when
watch
I
it out.
became a Christ follower, man, I didn't drink because I was afraid of it. Honestly, I I was just scared to death of it. I
Yeah.
didn't drink for how many years?
20?
I mean, I didn't have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20, 25 years.
There's a good reason to be scared
Yeah.
of it. There's a good reason to have a
Yeah.
healthy fear of
Yeah,
it. It
definitely.
does. I mean, the statistics, when you actually look into it,
Yep.
of how many Americans die of alcohol-related causes every year,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
actually pretty
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest killers, I think, in our country of anything, because it's not an accident related. It's not you don't. It's people. It's willingly,
Yeah.
So it is good. I think for people to have a healthy fear of it and
Yeah.
respect, and obviously there's different perspectives on
Sure.
what moderation looks like in different churches that have different, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to conviction,
Yep.
hearing the voice of the Spirit.
Yep.
My favorite quote on alcohol is G.K. Chesterton. He said, "Never drink because you're miserable. Only drink if you're going to drink because you're joyful."
Wow.
The idea of
That's
like you're not
really
looking to
good.
alcohol to cheer you. He's saying if you're joyful and you can drink out of that joy,
Wow.
and that's your conviction, great.
Love it.
But don't ever. It's such good
Drink out of
advice. Don't drink to cheer yourself up because
Yeah.
it's not gonna
Yeah.
give you what you hope it will.
Yeah. Wow.
Every empty bottle's dry.
Come on, somebody. There you go,
Dang.
Yeah.
man. What was the best and worst thing about growing up on army bases?
Oh man, it was just cool. I remember seeing, the guys out. I don't know what they called them, doing their. I mean, I think it was just their PT. So the marching, the running, was really really neat. I remember because Dad was an officer, we got to go to the officers club. So the swimming pool, and it just felt really neat. I know they do field days where, you'd be out and all the, Chinook helicopters, and my dad was airborne, so you'd watch these men parachute in.
Wow.
So just kind of being around that, we always had fun stuff to play with. I mean, our favorite thing was to play Army. So we played Army just nonstop, had all the
awesome.
the stuff. Dad was 2 tours in Vietnam, and
Jeez.
he let us mess with all his stuff. So it was awesome.
Amazing.
So that's the best.
Yeah.
What was the worst?
Oh man, I think the picking up.
Just when you made some friends and got used to your neighborhood and the school.
Yeah. But I don't really have a lot of bad memories at all. I mean, from it, it was all fun. Remember, Dad back then was real fit, and he ran a lot, and so he'd be on runs and find a turtle, bring it home. Just that
That's
kind of,
funny.
that kind
I've
of.
seen turtles while riding my bike. I've never once thought about, I should bring that
Bring
turtle
one
home.
Yeah,
home.
he just would bring it home.
Like, hey kids,
Just
I saw
run
a
with
turtle.
it on
Yeah.
the way home.
He's
Yeah.
jogging. He's got it like down his spandex,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, one time we brought a turtle
Wow.
home, and then we traded the turtle for a kid who found a black snake. So we traded the turtle for the snake. So now we got the snake, and so now we got to get something to feed the snake. We got to buy mice.
Okay.
Mice had babies.
Oh, gotcha.
The snake wouldn't eat the mice.
Did the
So-
turtle eat the mice?
No.
He
Oh.
traded the turtle for
Oh,
the
you don't have a
snake.
Traded for
the
the-
turtle
That
is
sounds
long
so
gone.
like
Yeah.
Huckleberry
Okay.
Finn.
That
So then
does.
we got the
Come on.
mice. So then we had these 2 mice had
Your mom was
babies.
so patient.
We traded the mice in for a guinea pig.
Okay.
That worked out well.
It was incredible.
So what did the snake
You
eat?
won in the end.
We let the snake go.
The snake was hungry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gizmo the guinea pig, right?
You
So
got it.
So you ended up with the guinea pig. You
Gi-
started with the turtle.
Gizmo.
Gizmo after
That's
the
right.
gremlins.
Oh.
that's
That's,
Child of the
that's
80s.
good, wholesome entertainment. though.
Seriously.
Raising snakes.
We need
and-
more
You
of
know
that.
what we realized is all those movies that we watched as kids, they were PG. So then you think, oh, I can let my kids watch
Yep.
these. And then
Yeah.
you're like, whoa.
The
PG
ratings
is
changed at
not
some
PG.
point.
I know.
They really did. Because any movie that you think from your child, oh, I got to show you this. Like,
Don't watch it.
oh, you think,
Goonies,
oh,
no.
Oh, this
No.
is much worse than I remember.
Beetlejuice, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Like the innuendos and the things
Yeah.
that you didn't catch as a kid, but then
Right.
it's like, oh,
16
And our kids
candles.
may
it's
not
like,
catch
oh, that's
all of it
shocking.
still.
It's
Breakfast
very
Club.
different. Yeah.
yes.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Oh, but that was funny.
The good, pleasant
Oh
films
my
from those days.
gosh.
Okay, so
Wow.
you played Army, but you became a pastor. Was there a season when you wanted to be in the Army like your dad, or is it when did you
good
know
question.
you got that you wanted to be specifically in ministry?
I'm the only man in my family who was not in the military
Oh.
on both sides.
You're in the Lord's army.
Yeah.
That's funny that you say that. One day Dad said that, and I felt he was disappointed with me.
Wow.
So when I gave my life to Christ, 6 months later, I was at a camp in the mountains of Tennessee, and this guy. Remember the old Stephen Curtis Chapman song, "For the Sake of the Call"?
Yes.
We will abandon it all.
Yes.
Remember that?
I love.
Okay.
Well,
I
she was
grew up
raised
with-
and steeped in serious Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael W. Smith,
Yeah.
Amy Grant.
Amy Grant.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one he did?
Go West, young man.
That's
Michael
Michael
W.
W.
Smith.
Smith. Great Adventure or something.
Oh yeah.
This is
The Great Adventure. Okay.
Adventure.
So this camp pastor was preaching, this, but he got to the point and it was just, for me, it was one of those moments. And he said, "Hey, some of you are going to be called into full-time ministry, and God's calling everyone, but for some it will be for vocation."
Absolutely.
And I remember, I was 6 months saved. Levi, I was wild in high school. So I'm coming off of a breakup with a girlfriend. I'm not, partying anymore. And I remember just weeping and going, I couldn't believe God was choosing me. So, the whole surrender your call.
Wow.
It was like, are you kidding me? I get to? Are you asking me to do this? Are you kidding me? So it was a very clear moment for me. I remember going up to the
Sarah, you're
Pastor
crying.
John.
I love this.
It's so beautiful.
It was a big moment for me. So I mean that's in our culture as a church, and we challenge our team all the time. We have a phrase, we can't believe we've been invited to the table. Who am I? That God rescued me out of darkness, and then he calls me to advance his kingdom. It's really unbelievable.
You're so grateful for what he did in your story,
So
in your
grateful.
life.
Yeah.
And what about you? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know.
You always told me. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
I want to
that's
answer for you.
No, I want to hear your
different.
answer before he gives what your answer
Okay,
is.
well, I would, I was a good student, and so I went to college on a scholarship, and I did not.
And you wore a sweatshirt and a hat.
Yes.
And it was hot.
And actually, we met in the library, which was very
Oh, wow.
fitting for
Fitting
me.
for
What a
her.
good place to pick up a girl.
That's it.
If you want to get a reader.
Game.
Good
There you
girl.
go.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't declare my major until it's like my junior year, and they're saying, "Sarah, you have to major in something," and I was like, I don't know what I want to be.
So what did you declare?
English.
Did you
Right,
say,
super
I
useful.
declare English? Such intense language.
I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't declared my major.
yet.
I was
You're just
like,
standing in
"No,
the
I love to
comments.
read."
I declare English.
I really
English
just
it
was
is.
like, let me tell you all the things I don't want to be, and what's left. An English major. And
Wow.
my poor dad was just like, Sarah, can you at least pick a useful minor? And was, like communications. I was like, no, I don't want to be a journalist. So I majored in English literature, and my minor was in Christian studies,
Oh, wow.
which at the time seemed very unproductive for a degree. Like what on earth are you going to do with that? But then I married a pastor, and we're in the ministry together, and we homeschool our kids.
But you were homeschooling pre-pandemic.
Oh yeah, we've homeschooled
So
for
you had
15
all that,
years.
Right.
all these people complaining about it. You had been,
I
you already had
mean,
this thing licked.
Yeah.
I told Pace for the first time in my life, I felt like I was ahead of the curve,
totally.
trendsetter.
Yeah.
Hello.
homeschooler.
Yeah.
There you
But
go.
my English degree has come in very handy.
What's your best advice for those moms who are still feeling like overwhelmed by homeschooling? Having, I mean, you guys,
don't
you've
know if
already
you
up.
ever
Your
don't
oldest in
feel
college.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good.
I mean,
that's
I've
good.
still-
Let's
feel
say that again.
overwhelmed.
I was interrupting you. Say that.
I don't know if you ever don't feel overwhelmed homeschooling.
Wow.
I mean, you just kind of learn to live with it. And I tell moms, like, when you have that mom guilt, like I'm not doing enough or I'm not doing it well enough or whatever, whether it's homeschooling or just raising your kids, bad moms don't feel guilty. Good moms. It's because you
Wow.
care.
Say
Wow.
that.
So
That's
just
so
stop
good.
stressing over it and just do the best that you can.
That's
This year
so
for
helpful.
2020, we're just doing a very laid back homeschooling at the Hartfield house. We're just trying to live through 2020 like everybody else.
Just love each other.
Yeah, and so we read a lot of books.
But
and
that's
we do
really
some math.
profound.
That really
Yeah.
is.
You
That's
know,
so helpful.
bad moms don't feel guilty. So the fact that you care
Yeah.
and would berate yourself or would be tempted to
Yeah,
betrays that your true heart is
Correct.
that you do care.
you're probably doing better than you think you are.
Oh yeah.
Love it.
I have to
Always.
tell you that all the
Encouraging
time.
nugget.
Actually, that's what Pace tells me all the time. I'd be like,
Yeah.
I'm juggling too many things and I'm dropping all the balls and I don't know where the underwear is.
She's
and I didn't
crushing
make
it all.
dinner. And he's
Yeah.
like, you're
She's
doing
crushing
great.
it all. Gifted writer, by the way, should be writing. Gifted writer.
Do it.
Ooh, yes.
She should be writing. She's like, I don't have anything to say. I'm like, you've got everything to
I
say.
don't know. We've listened to you. There's some things to say.
Yeah.
And even just
Yes.
watching you
Yeah.
cry as your husband's telling his call to
Yeah,
ministry. It's
gifted.
There's a
profound.
tenderness. Yeah.
What is it that you've talked about homeschooling some, and to people in our community to help
Yeah.
them. But what you were saying, you would say something about don't forget it's home school.
Right. It's
So-
not school at home. I mean, you cannot. And I was a teacher for 2 years. I taught middle school because we needed insurance while Pace was doing seminary. And so I got an emergency certification, and I actually hated it. And I don't know if it was because it was middle school or that may have been it. But
Yeah.
really, homeschooling is not replicating what they're doing in the schools. I mean, that's just not. It's not apples to apples. And I think if you try to take school and do it at home and we're going to sit at this desk for 6 hours and that's the worst of both worlds. And so that's
So
what
you can
I
make
told
so you can make the
people.
most of it to say,
Yeah.
hey man, you don't have to sit at a desk for 6 hours. Get your work done 30 minutes here. My son, Grayson is like me and can get distracted and is he energetic and he walks around. And so that's the way he learns. And so he's up. And so you just, you make the most of it.
Yeah.
And the education process. I mean, our kids are everywhere for homeschool.
Yeah, we
Like-
say homeschool, but a lot of times it's Starbucks schooling and church
Right.
schooling and
Yeah,
choir
it's
everywhere.
schooling and Grammy and Papa's schooling. I mean, we just, but I do think for those who are homeschooling who are like, you know what, I might actually like this. I might want to do this past pandemic. What I love about it is the flexibility and the
Yes.
family culture.
Yes.
And so I would say if I'm passionate about anything besides Jesus, it's family. That's my big
And a
passion.
culture for your unique family.
Right. And I think that's
Yeah.
why I had a hard time finding a major in college and nailing down what did I want to do, because really I just wanted to be a wife and a mom, but that's not super acceptable when you've just been given a full scholarship to college, And so I love that that's what I do, and we lead the church together. But home and family is always like our time priority.
Yep.
Love it.
And so it's just messy.
Yep.
Amen.
What a
It's really
beautiful
messy.
mess.
Beautiful
Yeah,
mess.
the best mess.
You
Love
guys
it.
are amazing. Thanks for coming on our podcast. Thanks
We
for
love you guys.
Love you
so
guys.
sharing some of your
much.
wisdom, your story, the beauty.
Yes, so helpful.
Man, I guarantee you've encouraged some people today.
Yeah,
so
you
thanks for your
encouraged
time.
us.
We love you
We love
guys.
you guys. Thank you.